Okay, Parshas Ki Tetzei. Parshas Ki Tetzei. There are a lot of commandments in this week's Torah portion, more commandments than any other Torah portion. There are 73, 74. Here it says there's 73, but I saw in another book where it says that there's 74 commandments in this week's Torah portion. We'll see what they are. Let's just have a look at some of them. Excuse me. Of course, Ki Tetzei is talking about when you go out to war, and if you find a non-Jewish lady that finds favor in your eyes, as a soldier. Soldiers are hot-blooded people in the middle of the war. So he can take her and he can have relations with her one time. And then he has to take her into his house, and there's a whole procedure, and we'll see what this procedure is. And it's very interesting because the Or HaChaim asks the question, how can it be only the most righteous of Jews were allowed to go and fight in the wars? It wasn't just people who were strong or were good fighters or whatever. They had to be Jews that were totally devoted to Hashem and his Torah. And according to the Torah, you can't have relations with a non-Jewish lady. How can it be in the height of the holiness? So the Or HaChaim explains, and the reason I'm telling you this is because in the Torah that I downloaded, it doesn't have the Or HaChaim in it. So I'm telling you, he said that they go out, not only that, they go out to war with what says with the broken tablets also. The tablets go out with them. It says the reason is because when they go out to war, the whole purpose of the war is what's called to elevate sparks of holiness. And sometimes these sparks of holiness can be trapped in these all sorts of places, including in this woman. So as strange as it seems, that's why this whole weird procedure is. Afterwards, she cuts her hair and her nails, and she has to sit around mourning her parents. And so that's the reason why it's elevating these sparks of holiness. Of course, you can't do this on your own. You have to, it has to be done only by means of the leader of the king of the Jewish people. He's the one that goes out to war. So here we go. Let's see a few of these 73 commandments, 74 commandments that are in this week's Torah portion. Positive commandment: to do the law of the attractive non-Jewish woman, Yafet Torah. In a war, like it says, Ki Tetzei LaMilchama, and you see in captivity a beautiful woman. It says if his impulses are giving him too much of an urge, as he should take her into a private place, have relations with her, and even when she still is a non-Jew, and then he has to take her to his house, and he cannot have relations with her anymore. After he had relations with her, if she accepts Judaism, then she converts immediately. If not, then she has to sit in his house for one full month. One full month, one full month, until she sits in one full month in her religion. In other words, she doesn't change her religion, but she has to cut off all of her hair, let her nails grow long, in order that she should be ugly. And if she accepts then Jewish people, the Jewish religion, then you convert her, but you have to wait for 2 more months, and then you can marry her. You can marry her with a chuppah and a kedushin. If he does not want her, then he has to send her free. And if she doesn't want to, if she sends her free, if she doesn't want to convert, then she can stick around for another 12 months. And if she accepts what's called the 7 Noahide commandments, then she's what's called a ger toshav. Of course, she can't marry him, the Jewish man, but at least she could stay in the land of Israel. If she doesn't convert, then he sends her away again. If she doesn't want to even accept the 7 Noahide commandments, then after 12 months, then we have to see, because the non-Jews are not allowed to live in the land of Israel, or non-Jews that they didn't accept the 7 Noahide commandments. They're not allowed to live in the land of Israel. That's the positive commandment. Here's 2 commandments, two negative commandments. 1 negative commandment: you're not allowed to sell this woman, this Yofes Torah. You took her for prison. She's not your possession. You cannot sell her because you had relations with her. It could be if you took her as a slave in war, it could be you could sell her. But because you had relations with her, you can't. A negative commandment: you cannot make her do any other work in the house. You can't say, okay, I won't marry you, but you'll be my housemaid. You work in the house. Here are 4 more commandments. It's a positive commandment that if a person speaks against God, uses the name of God in a negative way, a curse, or he curses God himself, curses God, or one who serves idols. So the punishment is stoning, but after he's stoned, he's hung up. You hang him up for 1 full day. What's this? Why doesn't it go down? Huh? All right. Excuse me, I have the book over here. Okay, sometimes this makes trouble. Okay, so you have to have, they put his 2 hands together. The person who was stoned to death, his 2 hands together, and then he's lifted up, but you cannot leave it overnight. Oh, there it is. Good. But he cannot be left overnight, hanging up. There we go. There we go. Okay. You cannot leave him overnight. They just hang him up for lift him up for an hour or something. A negative commandment: you can't leave it there overnight. That's the next negative commandment. It's the same thing, any other dead person. It's a good thing when a person passes away that he should be buried as soon as possible. Making trouble for me. This is not nice, not nice. See, this thing is supposed to stick over here. All right, making technical difficulties over here. Oh, there it is. A positive commandment: a person who is killed by Beis Din has to be buried on the same day that he's killed. Again, you shouldn't leave him overnight. Here we have 2 more commandments. A positive commandment to return any lost items. We see that there's a lot of different commandments over here. To return any lost items. There we go. Good. Okay. To return anything you see that's lost. There's a lot of laws regarding this, how to return it, and what you should do if you don't know who the owner is, and how to announce it, and how long you have to look for the owner, and etc. Very interesting laws, but I want to get into the Chumash portion today. Sometimes, what if you find something that is not according to your honor? You're a very honorable person, and you find a child's doll or something like that in the street. You have to go around pick it up and looking for it. What about a Kohen that he sees some lost object laying in a graveyard? His Kohen is not allowed to go in the graveyard. Then he doesn't have to go in. etc. More interesting laws. But in general, if you find something that is lost, you have to return it to the one who's lost. This is a commandment. If a Jewish person loses it. If a non-Jew loses, you do not have to, according to the Torah, to return it. But on the other hand, it's forbidden to steal from a non-Jew. Just, is it a commandment? It's a good thing. Of course, you have to return lost items to everybody. Negative commandment. Don't, turn your eye. You see something lost? If it's a Jewish person that lost it, a Jewish item, you cannot ignore it. You can't ignore it. Also, the same thing that says that if you see someone's sheep or cow wandering around, it seems to be lost, don't say, I didn't see anything, just don't pay attention to it. No, you must pay attention to it, and you must try to return it to the owner. 2 more commandments. Negative commandment, not to, if you see your friend's animal suffering under its burden, he can't get up, you should help him, even if it's your enemy. Positive commandment, you have to help him. But negative command, the negative side of it is don't ignore it. Positive side.
Huh?
Nobody closes that. Does AKA mean otherwise known as?
Yes.
Positive side of it is that you should help him. It's a positive commandment to help the person if his ox or whatever is suffering under the burden, to help him lift up the ox. And this thing is making me troubles. Can't go down. Here we go. Let's try from here. All right. See when I should put it somewhere else. Let's see. Let's try it over here. Here, 1 second. Let's try the same. No, when I move it somewhere else, it doesn't work. Okay. Is that enough? Let me just read this for here because it gets stuck over here. If I use the wrong, if I access this from the wrong place, so it gets stuck and it doesn't go any further. Here's a couple more commandments in this week's Torah portion. Oh, there it goes. It went. Oh, good. What? Not to leave an animal right. That's what we said. It's rebelling against me. Rebelling. Sorry, 1 second. But let's just get out of here 1 minute. Excuse me. Maybe we can put this in somewhere else. It just doesn't scroll down. It scrolls down halfway and suddenly decides to stop. So let's see if we can put it over here and maybe it will be better. Whew. Yes, all right. So something worked. Here we go. Return lost items. Next. We should have done in the first place. Here we go. A negative commandment. A woman should not wear men's clothing. Next negative commandment. A man should not wear women's clothing. It's a forbidden thing for a man to dress up like a woman. Forbidden. It says that it is permissible, like on Purim, things like that, for a joke, but it's not. It's a forbidden thing to do. Negative commandment. This must be more commandments over here than just that. Here's 3 of them. Yes, negative commandment, and that if you happen to come across a nest with a bird sitting on the nest, on the eggs of the nest, you cannot take the bird if there are eggs in the nest. You must send away the bird and take the eggs. Why? Because that's just what God said. It's a law to do it. You can say, oh, because it's kindness, it's not nice. Take the mother away and leave the eggs, they won't do it. That's not the reason why. The reason is very simply because God said you should take the eggs and not the same thing with little birds. There's little birds with the mother sitting on top of them. Take the little birds and eat them. You might think it's kindness. The kindness is leave the whole thing alone. Let the birds alone, let the mother alone. You shouldn't take anything at all. But you are allowed to take the birds or the chicks, but don't send the mother, don't take the mother and leave the chicks or the eggs there. Next command, you have to watch, that's the negative part. The positive part, do send the mother away. The mother bird, send it away. There are a lot of details here. What happens if you do take the mother? If there's still children they're there, then you can always go back and send the mother away. Right? And you can do. And what if you slaughtered the mother and left the children there? So you have right, then the punishment is lashes. If a person takes the mother to himself and slaughters it, leaves the children there or the eggs, the punishment is lashes. Obviously, this is not such a severe crime as far as morally or whatever. It's just a law of God. That was the whole novelty of the Torah, that God gave these laws which make absolutely no sense and similarly have no benefit to anybody. Right? They don't make you into a more spiritual or practical or anything person. That's called chukim. It's laws, you do it because God wants you to do it. Positive commandment. There's big Kabbalists and things that deal with the inner meanings of this. And in Chassidut, it's explained also to a certain degree. Positive commandment, and let's just do 2 more, and that's 3 more. A positive commandment, to make a ma'akeh. You have to make a fence around your house. If your house is like 4 amas high, then you have to make a roof, a fence around the roof so that no one will fall from your roof. A negative commandment, don't leave anything anywhere that could be a stumbling block. Don't dig holes in the middle of the road. Don't put tacks on people's seats. Don't do things that might be danger, public danger. You're not allowed to do it. It's called making a michshol. Nezek the Rabin. Here we go. 2 or 3 more. Here we go. A negative commandment, not to plant grains like wheat, barley in a vineyard. This is what's called kilayim. Kilayim, you're not allowed to make kilayim. What's the reason for that? Again, absolutely no sense involved. It's like wool and linen together. We'll get to that also. God said don't do it. God creates the world. He knows what he's doing. We don't. Therefore, you have to, the Jewish people, this is a commandment for Jewish people. You're not allowed to plant kilayim, wheat or any grains in a vineyard. That's called Kli Yakar. There's other type of kilayim. A negative commandment, not to plow together with an ox and a donkey together. This applies to any, if it's a kosher and a not kosher animal, you can't plow together. You want to plow together. You want to pull your wagon with a dog and a sheep. You're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it. Negative commandment, not to put on a garment that is woven with wool and linen together. This is called sha'atnez. And let's do this, the last one for today. Positive commandment to marry a woman with kedushin, a process. You can't just take a woman and just agree to get married, meet some lady in the street and say, would you like to get married, Jewish lady? And she says yes, and that's it. You take her to your house and you're just married. You're not allowed to do that. It says that there has to be a whole process of doing it. When you want a woman, you have to mekadesh her first. You have to possess her and there has to be an official thing that I'm marrying this woman. You could give her money, you could give her a document, or you could even have sexual relations with her, but it has to be in the name, and they don't do that anymore. It has to be with witnesses, and it has to be with witnesses with the sexual relations that you just see them going into a room, but they don't have to. But sexual relations is not done anymore. Nowadays, only you have to give her a document or give her money. Nowadays, they do practically all three. You give her a ring, the ring is like money, and you give her a document, that's called a ketuvah, and then consummating the marriage afterwards. But officially, if you just give a woman any one of those three things, just a ring, and say, you are married to me, that's it, she's married, even without a document, without this. But there has to be one of those. It can't just be a casual relationship between a man and a woman. Very complicated. There's a whole law of, the whole Gemara written about it. All of Evan Ezra, half of it is talking about the laws of getting married. The other half talks about getting divorced. Okay, and then let's leave it at that, and let's go to our Chumash class. Where is it? Here it goes. There it goes. All right, let's have a few. Here we have a few commandments here that we didn't sort of get into. If you go out to war, okay, this is this week's Torah portion. If you go to war on your enemy, and God will put him in your hand, and you will take a prisoner. It's interesting. It's all in the singular. Ki teitze, when you go out, it doesn't say ki teitzu. When you singular go out on oivecha, on your enemy, v'natono, and God puts him in your hand. So the Kli Yakar is going to stand on this. He's going to have a very big explanation. But the simple meaning is that your enemy is like one person. And when you go out to war against him, the milchamat reshut, this is talking about an optional war. Now there was what's called an obligatory war, milchamat mitzvah. And that is if the enemy attacks you, of course, or the conquering of the land of Israel, the 7 nations that were in Israel, and also a war against Amalek. Those were milchamat mitzvah. That everybody had to go on. Even women went out to fight. But here it says, ki teitzei lemilchama, when you go out to fight, it's talking about going out from Eretz Israel. This is talking about an optional war. In Eretz Israel, in the war of taking over the land of Israel, it doesn't say v'shvita shivyo. It can't say take a prisoner. Why? Because when they're fighting in the land of Israel, it says lo techia kol neshama, everybody has to be killed. You have to kill everyone. When we're taking over the land of Israel, everybody had to be killed unless they ran away. It says that's what the Girgashi, that's what they did. They ran away. Shavisa Shivyo, you can take a prisoner, Larabot Canaan. So what are we talking about? We're talking about you go out of the land of Israel and you make a war with any of the kings that are outside of Israel. Or I would imagine also that there were other kings that were in Israel. It says there were 31 of them. In any case, not the 7 nations, when you go out and you take a prisoner. So it says, what happens if when you take a prisoner, there happens to be a prisoner, one of the 7 nations that you were supposed to kill everybody, and they ran away or they were taken as slaves by some other nation. So it says you can let them live, even though that they are from the 7 nations. You're still allowed to let them live. So if you fight directly against the 7 nations, you have to kill all of them. But all the 7 nations were already killed way back, 3,300 years ago. So you don't have to worry about that today. But according to the other nations, if you happen to war against another nation, and there happens to be one of the 7 nations, which they don't exist nowadays, but back then, is you could take him or her as a prisoner. Here's an interesting thing. Bala Turim says, Ki teitzei aleihem v'al tanahem, go out and fight against them, and don't let them to come fight against you. In other words, don't wait for the enemy to attack you. You have to preemptively strike. Like it says, Hashkem v'horgo. Hashkem v'horgo. You have to wake up early and kill him before he begins to kill you. Go and tell him, don't let them come to you. Pen yishchatu ha'oretz. And also don't leave them alone. Don't let them live and surrender or something, because they'll destroy the whole land. We talked about already last week. So it says also, when you go to war, al oivecha, on your enemy. It should have said when you go to war with your enemy. What does it mean? But if you go to war because God wants you to, you'll already be on your enemy. You're already over them. Victory will be assured. And here the Kli Yakar, he says it clearly. It says, certainly this is talking about one enemy. One enemy. Prati, Shehi, who is this enemy you're going to go out and fight? This is talking about, and in it there's a lot of enemies. What is this talking about? This is the Yetzer Hora, the devil, which is inside of each and every one of us, the Yetzer Hora that wants to make us sin. And especially when there's a time of a war, a battle, a war, like it's explained in other places, when there's a war, then that's the time when and that's why it says when the Jews went out to war, only the righteous Jews could go out, because if they had any sins, then that was the time when they would say, oh, you're going to win a war. Hey, remember when you stole the candies from the store when you were 14 years old, right? So you did a little sin, and that sin is going to be a weak part in your spiritual armor. So that's what it says, that you've destroyed the Yetzer Hora. If so, he asked the question, how can it be that you take this woman, a beautiful woman? And he says it's because of the taking these sparks and etc. You should you see in captivity a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and you want to take her for a wife. Rashi says the Torah is only talking about the Yetzer Hora. A person's Yetzer Hora suddenly strikes him, and he wants to have relations with this woman. He doesn't know what to do. Should he leave her? So therefore, if God doesn't let this soldier have relations with this woman, then he'll say, okay, I don't care what God says. I'll want to have relations with her anyway. If God doesn't allow him to do it, then he's going to do it in a forbidden way. But if he does get married to her, in the end, he's going to hate her. Like it says afterwards, when there'll be, if a man, the next commandment, the next section is talking about when a man has 2 wives and they hate each other. In the end, he's going to give birth to what happens the next section after that, a Ben Sora or more, an evil, rebellious son. Therefore, these are one after the other. It says, Eshet Yafator. Why does it say Eshet Yafator? It should have said Isha. Eshet. Oh, I'm sorry. Eshet means even a wife. Eshet means somebody's wife. Even if she's married to a non-Jew, he can still take her because there's no official marriage as far as a non-Jew goes. I don't think this law really applies nowadays, but I mean, it doesn't say that it doesn't. So, but I've never heard that it happens. Nevertheless, this is the official law. You can take this law. And like I say, the Or HaChaim asked the question, how could it possibly be such a thing? All the people that go out are tzaddikim, and you're talking against the Yetzer Hora. What's it? So he explains, no, the source of the Yetzer Hora is really something that's good, and the source of it. And the whole idea is that we bring it back up to its source and reveal the spark of godliness, which is there. And then after that, it refines the whole situation. The whole thing sounds very, very strange, and it certainly is, but that's the Torah. That's what the Torah says. Eshet Yafat Torah, sorry. Here he says, the Kli Yakar, oh, excuse me 1 minute. Here. It says, the Ramban says that all of this is talking about she has to sit in their house and she has to mourn her parents and she has to look terrible. This is the whole thing of mourning her parents. This is talking about another, and that the soldier that took her should remember the day of death. And he should remind his Yetzer Hora the day when he's going to die. That's what it says. A person that is Yetzer Hora starts overpowering him, that he should put on, it says a person should change his garments and whatever, and go to a different place. Nobody should recognize him, if he wants to do some sort of a sin like this. And therefore, when he takes this whole process, maybe his Yetzer Hora will go away from him, and especially by remembering the day that he's going to die. What happens when a person dies? When a person dies, all that he's accomplished in his life, it's basically not his anymore. It's got nothing. He's a different person, right? So what difference does it make? It's like if a person is a big king or somebody smacks him in the side of the head, and he forgets who he is, right? He forgets who he is. So we say, "Oh, Your Majesty, the king." He doesn't even know what the word means, king. It's like he built this whole thing and nothing belongs to him. So what does he get out of it? The same thing, a person after he dies. So what is he going to get out of all of his efforts in the world? So if he puts his efforts in something that's meaningful, or at least doing what God wants, so he did what God wants. He's connecting to the creator of the universe. That's eternal. But if he sees some non-Jewish girl and he has relations with her, so when he dies, what's going to be of this? I haven't done anything. I just did it because I had a desire for it. So maybe that will get him back into his senses. He says an interesting thing here. 1 second, let's see if I can find. Okay, you should bring the Turk, and you should bring her inside of his house, cut all of her hair, and let her nails grow long. Astas Tzipor says Rashi, Tigdalem. They should grow long so that she should look ugly. Remove the garments of her imprisonment, and she should sit in the house cry for her mother and her father 1 full month. In other words, she's not going to go back there because there's no mitzvah to kill her parents necessary. It says her garments that you took her into captivity, they were nice looking. Usually that's what the non-Jews used to do back then. When the Jews would attack, so they would dress their daughters up nicely to distract the Jewish soldiers to distract the Jewish soldiers after them. And then you take this lady, she sits in your house for the house where you live. When you go in, you see her. When you come out, you see her. You're always meeting her. She can't go into her own room. She hasn't got any room. You see her, she's always crying. She's always miserable. She looks terrible. She doesn't put any makeup on. She hasn't got long, wavy hair like she did when you first saw her. And then it says why? In order that the Jews should be happy and that she should not be. And then if he still decides that he wants to marry her, so now it's for more altruistic reasons, and he can marry 1 month, right? It says 1 month. Why? He says because just like the moon, it gets bigger and it gets smaller, etc., like that. So also the same thing is by this lady, right? When he took her, she was beautiful, she was full, and now she gets smaller 1 month. And if he doesn't want her, then he has to get rid of her. She has to send her away, but he cannot sell her and he cannot use her because he had relations with her. We just finished learning that in laws, right? Next law. If a man has 2 wives, it's permissible for a man to get married to 2 wives. I don't know, it's not a very advisable thing to do, that's for sure. But if you'll see what the outcome is. One of them, the wives he loves, and the other wife he doesn't like. And she gives birth to they give birth to 2 sons. One gives birth to a son, and the beloved wife and the hated wife, each one gives birth to a son. But it happens to be the firstborn is the son of the hated one. Remember we had that, like Reuven. He was the son of Leah. Leah was not beloved by Yaakov. He wanted to marry Rachel, and her parents tricked him. Right? What is it? The Lavan tricked him and gave him Leah instead. Instead, he woke up. So Leah was never beloved by him, and it happened. That's exactly what happened. The firstborn was Reuven that came from this. So nevertheless, and the day that he gives an inheritance to his sons, that which he's got, he is not allowed to give the first son that was born less. He cannot say to the second son that he loves more, you'll be the firstborn. According to Judaism, the firstborn son in inheritance, when the father dies, the firstborn son gets a double portion. For instance, a person that has, let's say, 5 sons, and the father dies. So they divide all of his properties into six portions. 6 portions, and the firstborn gets 2. And all the other sons, they get 1. Right? So that's how the firstborn gets a double portion. So, okay, now here we have this man gets married to 2 wives. One he loves, the other one he doesn't love. And the one that he does not love gives birth first. And he's got this firstborn son. He doesn't like the mother and doesn't like the son. And now he's writing out his will. He cannot shirk his Torah responsibility. He has to give the double portion to his despised son. In this case, the son is really not despised so much. The mother is the one that was despised. He doesn't like the mother. The son didn't do anything wrong. So here we have a very interesting, let's see, is this one? That's key. Okay. Right. Here is the Sofrono, Rebbe Vadim Sofrono. He says you can't take the firstbornship, the firstbornness, whatever it is, the double portion, from the son just because he hates the mother or because he loves the other one. But if the son himself is bad, then it could be that he can take it away. And that's exactly what happened that Yaakov, here it says, Imlo haya noeg keshura. So for instance, that's what Yaakov did when Reuven, it says Reuven disturbed the bed of his mother, and Reuven was jealous because when Leah died, so Yaakov moved his tent, when Rachel died, so Yaakov moved his bed where he used to sleep every night, instead of moving it to sleep with Leah, like it should have been, instead he moved it to sleep with Bilhah, who was the maidservant of Rachel. And so he got mad and he disarranged the bed. So Yaakov got mad because of that, and he took away the firstbornness from Reuven, and he gave it to Yosef in Israel. Okay, Das Kanim says something a little bit different, but that's all right. Let's go. Why? Because the firstborn, the one that was the firstborn of the hated woman, he has to recognize to give a double portion. Because he was the first one, he was the first child that's born. He gets the firstbornness. Next law. What if a man has a ben sor of Amorah? So he goes from one thing to even worse. That's what Rashi said. He gets married to this Ishas Yafas Torah, this non-Jewish woman that he sees her in war. And then from that comes that he's got two wives. One of them hates the other one. And then, he hates one of them. And then after that, he gives birth to this terrible son, Ben Sor of Amorah. And he doesn't listen to the sound of his mother and the sound of his father. And they punish him. And he doesn't listen to what they have to say. So let's see. Let's just do this. Sor of Amorah. Here. It says, no. I skipped the one that I wanted to get. Okay. Oh, here it is. No. Okay, I wrote it down which one I wanted, but I somehow lost it. Okay, so that's what he says. Because he gets married to this Isha Shazavas Torah, so one bad thing happens to another, and finally gets to this Ben Sor of Amorah. Ben Sor of Amorah, it's a son that it says, Rashi says, they kill him. It's a son, he doesn't really do anything that bad. What does he do? He doesn't listen to his mother, doesn't listen to his father. I mean, that's already pretty bad. It says if a person curses his parents, that's bad enough. So he gets killed by stoning. And the Das Zakanim asks, why should he get stoned? Because it says in the end, he's going to be a thief, a murderer, and a thief. He says, well, a murderer, only the death of a murderer is punished by beheading with a sayaf. And the punishment of the Ben Sor of Amorah is worse. He gets punished by skila. So how can it be? He says, probably because he also curses his parents. So that's probably, anyway, his parents grab a hold of him. Let's go back to the son. This son, he doesn't listen to what the parents say. He's really terrible. Let's see Rashi. Misarev, he refuses to listen to his words of his father, and they take him in front of judges and they beat him. He beat him. It's not bad enough. Now he has to steal and eat a certain amount of meat that's sort of half cooked, and then he has to drink a half of a lug of wine, a certain amount of wine, like it's a zol of a sove, and he's killed because of what he's going to do. That finally, in the end, if we don't stop him, then in the end, he's going to steal all the money of his parents, and he'll stand in the corners, hide in the corners, and he'll steal from the people. So the Torah says it's better that he should die clean than die guilty. Strange law. He hasn't even done anything that warrants his death, and nevertheless they kill him because of what he's going to do. The Torah says, and it says in the Gemara that there never was such a thing. In order to really in order to be eligible for such a punishment, is he has to eat exact amount of meat, an exact meat he has to steal it, exact amount of wine. It says there was never such a thing. But nevertheless, his mother and his father catch him. They take him to the elders of the city, and they say to the elders of the city, this son is a sorer v'moreh. He doesn't listen to what I say. He is drinking, he's eating, and it says that all the people of the city stone him with stones. and he dies, and you'll get rid of the bad, which is, I think this never has happened, and it never will happen. And all the Jewish people will hear, and they will be afraid. So here we've learned a few of the laws, and we've learned a few of the sentences of this week's Torah portion. And God willing, we'll continue tomorrow. Have a good day with Mashiach now.